It's March 23rd, 2017, and today I thought I would make a video entitled Why I Sold My Amplitrex AT-1000. Should be an insightful video for some of you, maybe a controversial video for others, but nonetheless we decided to make this video. So let's dive on in. All right, first up, this is kind of the top plate of the Amplitrex AT-1000. It's where all the controls are at, all the tube sockets, etc. You'll notice on the bottom left-hand side down here, you've got your traditional IAC power connector, got a power switch, and this is where your USB connector goes in that then talks back to your computer. Over here, you've got a variety. There's a 4-pin tube socket for testing things like 45, 2A3, etc. You got a 5-pin tube socket, a 6-10-pin tube socket. So it tests most all of the old tube type sockets, you know, going way back in time. Whereas some of the more modern tube testers today, you find either won't test the old ones or they won't test the new ones, etc. Got a couple different 8-pin octal sockets here, and it'll tell you when you insert a tube which socket to put it in. I guess they're configured differently. And then you got your 9-pin socket over here, and you can see somebody has added a socket saver of some type on it. You got your little 7-pin tube socket here. This up here is actually a volume. It's an old phono 1/4-inch jack, like you would plug headphones into an old stereo receiver. I ended up buying a little adapter to use a 1/4-inch, to use a much smaller plug and with modern headphones, and it worked well. And then you have an audio level over here, and that's all useful for kind of tapping tubes when they're in the unit to see if you hear any microphonics with the plates and or grids moving around, etc. And then you've also got ground, grid cap, and plate cap, and it comes with adapters that you plug in basically to go to the caps of tubes that don't have all the pins going out the bottom. This right here in the middle is kind of your display, and then down here you've got a set of 4 buttons that kind of walk you through the menus of the display, and your enter button to make, to do select on your choices there. All right, up next, you can see here a couple more pictures. This one on the upper left is with the plate taken out of this chassis and basically flipped upside down. You can see what's on the inside of it. A nice Hammond transformer, couple printed circuit boards here, lots of connectors going to various things. Over here another transformer, probably for the filaments. I imagine this is for the high voltage, etc. But you can kind of get a feel for what one of these things looks like on the inside. And it looks pretty serviceable, by the factory, maybe so by you, although it's got some logic cards in it, so those may be tough to obtain in the future if they ever went out of business or something. But the actual, things like capacitors, resistors, relays, things like that, you could self-service if needed down the road. Over here on the right shows one of the tube socket adapters to let you test different tube type here, and it's also, you can see the connector leading up to the plate cap. This is the 211-845 adapter. It's an external box, really nice made, nice tube socket inside of it. This thing was a couple $100, and it plugs into one of the sockets, lets you test 845s or 211 type tubes. And then you can also see here, this is the case with it closed. I think it's actually a Pelican case. A lot of Pelican makes cases for guns, cameras, all sorts of ruggedized usages, and I think basically they took the stuffing out of the inside of this, made a metal plate that fit in it and bolted down, and determined to use that as the cabinet, which makes it a very rugged unit. You could ship this thing and never have any worry of it getting damaged, etc. Okay. And I'm going to dive on into some PowerPoint slides at this point. Unfortunately, I can't show you in person some of the things I'm talking about. You either just have to trust me or maybe ask somebody that does have one to make a video for you, because I've actually sold my unit. I owned it for about 2 years, from 2014 through 2016. And the fact I don't have it with me, I should have made this video before I ever got rid of it. I could have demoed some of this stuff, but sadly I don't. So it's mostly going to be a PowerPoint conversation today. First thing here, I know I will get flamed by people that own Amplitrexes for this video. I'm sure there'll be a thread of comments below telling me how wrong I am and this and that and the other. Here's what I'm telling you. This is my perception or my opinion of the box. So take it for what that's worth. Take it with a grain of salt. I just felt the desire. I really needed to share this experience because I was pretty hyped up when I bought this thing around what it might be, and then it just turned out to be a little less than that. And I just, I'd hate other people to buy one and go through the same experience I do. Or at least if they buy one, they'll know what they're getting up front and they'll have their expectations set to match that. And maybe they'll be completely happy with it. So, these things cost a lot of money. I said that people kind of need to know what they expect. And many of the things I'm pointing out, hey, I can tell you right now, I'm a type A personality. I'm kind of a little bit of OCD and ADD. So, little things bother me that might not bother anyone else. It drives me to perfection in a lot of things I do. And, other people may be, hey, that what you're talking about, it doesn't bother me a bit. Maybe I don't test enough tubes for that to ever come into play or whatever. So, other people may be perfectly fine with the things that I pointed out here in this video. So just take it as my perception and take it based on my experiences with my scenario, and take that with a grain of salt. All right, first, why did I buy an Amplitrex? First off, I was trying to maximize the value of my tubes. I called it tube value maximization. I started noticing back in 2013, 14, even before, prices on tubes that were Amplitrex tested that had nice little printouts of the tube specs seem to bring higher values. Not that I'm really in the tube selling business, but I've got a lot of tubes, and one day, if I have got all these things labeled and tested, something happens to me and my kids end up with these tubes, at least they could put them on eBay and get the most amount of money out of them. So that was one thing that drove me down this path. Second, it had modern features. It gave me the ability to print out or save tube test results of each tube. It let me test multi-section tubes kind of at once. In other words, you plug the tube in one time, you kind of set the configuration, you test it, unlike a TV7 or a Hickok 539 or many others, where you had to kind of configure the whole tube tester for one section of the tube, test it, and then, kind of reconfigure the tube tester and test the other side of it. A lot of times if I'm testing, let's say I've got a dozen 12AX7s laying there and I'm testing them, I'll go through and test all the left sides of the 12AX7s and mark them, and then I'll reconfigure the tube tester, and then I'll go back through and test the same tubes again on the right hand side. So it builds in multiple steps when you do that. So I like that concept. Hey, I really love this computer controlled option. The fact that I could use my computer with this thing and just sit here and enter in tube type, bam, drop the tube in the socket, test it. It sounded like a great idea. Hey, this thing had adapter sockets for 211 and 845. You won't find that in practically any other tube tester. So I was extremely pleased with seeing that. It had compactrons. Most other tube testers will have some adapters or some capability around that, etc. Up next, I kind of thought, hey, this is the cool new thing to do. It's a fresh new approach to tube testers. The last tube testers that were made probably in the early 70s at the best. Most of them in the 60s and before. Some of the B&K units were probably made early mid 70s, started getting more modern, but most of the old, the TV7s, the Hickocks, the Cardmatics, on and on. These things were made, many, in the 60s, to be honest, 50s and 60s. Some of them even older than that. And I thought, hey, there's a fresh new approach here. Somebody's made a modern unit that interfaces with a computer, looks pretty slick. I liked it, and so it took me on to, hey, at the time, I just happened to have an extra 3K laying around. I don't remember why, but I did. And so just so you know, this is kind of what I paid. I paid $26.75 plus $58 shipping for the basic unit in 2014. I do not know what they cost today. If you go to Amplitrex's website, they do not have their price on there anywhere. Chris basically says, email me to get a quote. So I don't know what they're asking today. And then there was an extra $266 included with shipping for the 12-pin Compactron tube, the 9-pin Magnavolt, and the 845/245 211 adapter. Basically, if you buy all three of those as a package, or at least when I did, he knocked $50 off. They were going to be like $312 or something, and he took off $50 or so for buying all three of those as a package. So basically, I had $2,941 all in my unit, including shipping and all. Okay, please, please, please don't take this whole video as negative. There are many things about this tube tester that I liked, and I think there are people that would buy this unit and absolutely love it. I just happen to have a unique scenario where I have a lot of tubes. I like to be able to test them very fast and very efficiently. I'm very familiar with just about every tube tester out on the market, not just using one, but I've worked on and calibrated just about every one out on the market. So I really understand kind of how they work behind the scenes. And so my scenario may be a little different. So a lot of people may buy this thing and love it. So please, please, please take this video with that in mind. First off, or second off, these are the things I really liked. I told you before, I can test these multi-section tubes with just one configuration. Hey, it produced tube results in both GM value that I could then go back and look, which I often had to do in RCA tube manual. And, you know, it would say, hey, the GM is this. And I'd go back and say, okay, well, the minimum is this, the max is that. It could help me tell where this tube stacked up, GM-wise, mutual transconductance, etc. And it also showed me as a percent of emission, which I kind of liked as well. I got both those readouts right on the front display of this thing. I like the fact that swapping between tube types is as simple as selecting a new type on the front panel via scrolling through the tube type or entering it into the software. And, you know, it's not turning 12 knobs to get there, if that makes sense. It was a super nice, clean package. You know, I kind of said this fresh, modern approach. It's computerized, a nice rugged case that seals up when not in use. All these are what I kind of liked about it when I bought it. I also like the fact you didn't have to use it as a computer connected device. I could pick it up and carry it over to a buddy of mine's house, sit down and test a bunch of tubes I was looking at buying or something. It operates just fine as a standalone unit. I will say Chris, the owner, kind of creator of this unit, he was very responsive to emails, always willing to talk and discuss things, give me insights. So A+ in customer service. You know, there was a few times I emailed him, it took him a week to get back to me, but that's just the name of the business. I'm sure this guy has a day job just like I do, and can't turn all the emails around overnight. But he was very responsive and always did answer my questions. And then another thing I liked, hey, when I got ready to sell this thing, I got $2,500 for mine on eBay, $24.99. I put it up for buy it now or make an offer, and it wasn't an hour, and someone had actually bought it at $25 or $24.99. So I never even had to go through the make an offer process. You know, I kind of then said, hey, minus the 17% eBay PayPal fees, I kind of netted $20.75. So all in all, it was a $900 experience loss on the flip for me. But relative to a lot of other stuff you buy new and then try to flip on eBay, that's not a bad deal. These are all things I liked about it. You know, I thought it really did a good job at detecting gassy tubes. I like that because it did it all within the same test. I thought it did a great job of testing seeing eye tubes, probably better than some other tube testers I've used in the past. And I also thought the headphone jack was very useful for tapping tubes and listening for microphonics. You know, helps you understand a little bit, especially tubes maybe you're going to use in a microphone setup or something that, or a phono section, something that's super sensitive. You want some really low microphonic tubes, and this would help you weed out the good ones from the bad ones. Even though they all test the same, say on a TV7 or something, you may have 5 tubes that all test like brand new. But then you bring them over here and run them through this and kind of tap on them a little bit and listen. And what you may find is, hey, out of those 5, only 2 of them really sound solid with any movement going on or any vibration in the room. So kind of helps out with that. All right. This is where I probably start to sound like Negative Nelly. Oh, it even kind of depresses me to go through this section. But I want to talk about kind of third, what disappointed me about this unit. You know, the computer controlled software and functionality, I said, were kind of meh. It's dated old software. It's just kind of clunky. The windows don't resize well. I just can't even begin to go into how many. Imagine, you know, using some, I don't know, Lotus 123 or WordPerfect back on your, you know, your early Windows device. Windows 3.1 had that kind of feel to it. It's actually written in Visual Basic 6, which is not really well supported in the 64-bit Windows world. I actually have a whole string of emails that I went back and forth with Chris on this, and he, you know, he kind of acknowledged that, so he didn't hide from it or whatever. And another thing about that software was there were readings you could get from the front panel standalone that you couldn't get through the software. So I can't remember which one, whether it was the percent emission or the GM, but you could get both those from the front panel. You couldn't get them both from the software. And it was just kind of an old COM port driven configuration, not modern day. It was almost like they were faking USB into some kind of serial converter type setup. It was just kind of clunky to get set up and configured properly. All right, and printing was even clunkier. So the printing app only prints to a specific brother printer type, and it really only works with kind of one size of labels. The printing app is not integrated into the main software. It's kind of this separate app. I think it was an add-on he came up with after the fact, where kind of behind the scenes it's cutting and pasting data between one and the other, and you can't even choose which data you kind of want mapped into that to the printing on the labels. You kind of get what you get. So I thought there was a lot of opportunity to improve that. Tube data was fairly comprehensive, but as I was going through, I started finding tubes from time to time, probably one out of every 30 or 40 that it didn't have tube data for. And you can always add tube data via the tube editor, but that kind of felt a little clunky as well. Take all my software quotes with a grain of salt. I've spent 25 years working in IT, much of which was leading architectural functions, including application design, development, integration, etc. So I just felt like I was dealing with a 20-year-old unit with some legacy techniques here with this thing, and that there was just a lot of modern, more fluent opportunity to make this stuff just better software and better integrated package all the way around. But everybody else might not notice that if you don't live in the IT world. I would say, you know, once you plug in the power cord and USB cable and socket savers on the lid, the unit doesn't close. So none of these connections come out the back. They're all on that top plate you see. You know, it's in a commercial Pelican case. Neat idea, but then it doesn't play out so well. My goal was to have this thing sitting on my desk right here with I've got this kind of wraparound desk in my office with two big computer monitors on one side, and on the other side, what I kind of wanted was this Amplitrex sitting here. And I thought I could just sit at my desk and test tubes and print out the little labels and bam, and fly through this stuff. And, you know, and that's cool. And then you go to close the lid at night, so to keep the dust out or whatever. And you can't really close the lid because then it bends your USB cable. And the lid can't close all the way. So it was just a little clunky. Clunky is a good word I'd use for this unit in general. Just not that it doesn't work, just a little clunky all the way around. Kind of like it should be. You know, if Hickok or a major manufacturing company was making this back in the day, it's almost like this was version 1.0, but yet it never evolved to version 2. And I would love to buy version 2 of this thing. The warm-up time on each tube, the unit has kind of this built-in timer to ensure each tube fully warms up before testing. While I value that approach, it turned out to be, I'm going to just say it here, a pain in the tail. Because, you know, like on a TV7 or some other tube testers, you know, you can kind of keep pushing the button until the thing kind of warm. You can kind of tell when it stopped warming up because the needle stops moving further over. This one wraps you into a 1-minute cycle, 60 seconds on every single tube for it to completely warm up before you test it. So like I said, while I value the approach, it just kind of brought everything to a crawl from a speed standpoint. And onward to my kind of second page of what disappointed me. I wanted to do curve testing of tubes. That's one of the reasons I wanted this thing. And they were kind of slow and time consuming, and kind of had to run one side of the tube, then the other side of the tube. But bottom line, you ended up with 5 minutes or more in testing every tube and producing curves. And then you didn't have a great way to save those, print those. I mean, it lets you, but it's all, again, just a little clunky. I would say, when it did both sides of the kind of the tube sections and a multi-section tubes, it still had to test each side independently. Even though you only had to configure it one time, it still had to test one side, then test the other side. It did not do them in parallel at the same time. There's this guy out there named, I don't know what he goes by, but jackmusic.com. They wrote a review of this unit. And if you go read it, it'll scare you to death. They go into about 15 different flaws they found in testing the Amplitrex tube tester. A lot of them were values that weren't correct with tubes. Other ones were they didn't believe in some of the methodology they used to produce things like emission values. Just some of the math behind and approach and how this thing produces results they argued and disagreed with. However, I'll say at the end of the day, this website also said, hey, they still have one, and they've also bought 2 others. For certain uses, they're a really good tube tester. They're just not the end-all be-all, was kind of their summary at the end of the day. I kind of wish I'd found this prior to my purchase. I don't know why I didn't. I thought I did a good amount of searching. Now it's easy to find when you type in Amplitrex. It's like the second article that comes up. But it always left me wondering about the accuracy of these things. So, which kind of goes back to, I wish there were more software updates, and you'll hear more about that in a minute. Now, up next, the 845-211 tube socket adapter. While it's there, it's just not accurate. Here's why. The bottom line, this thing cannot produce the voltages, plate voltages. Need to test either one of those tubes in a in a real life scenario. So while they could tell you that, hey, yeah, they're good and the heaters come on and they actually conduct, they can't give you real values of how good these tubes are percentage wise, because they're operating way outside of their design specs. So just know that it's a lot of money to buy that couple $100 tube socket adapter to then find out this thing just doesn't produce the plate voltages to test those accuracy. Another thing was a little bit of a pet peeve with me. They keep no customer base of established people that have bought these things, nor any way for you to update your email, join their mailing list per se. You basically have to email them and say, hey, any new software came out? They don't even really update it on their website or keep their software versions out on their website. So in the 1 year that I had mine, they really only gave me one piece of software updates, just tube data, and I had to ask for that myself. Well, it's kind of a little disappointing. And my third and final, what disappointed me slide. One, the fan was pretty loud on it. This thing had when you turn it on, fan came on. And so I had this set up on my office desk here, and I just like to kind of leave it on while I'm testing tubes and doing other things. But, like a phone rang. I ended up turning off the tube tester. Somebody popped up and wanted to chat with me on Skype or something. I had to turn off the tube tester. Fan was, just a little loud. But I kind of get why. It's all enclosed and sealed in a package, and got some heat in there, had to get it out. I understand why. And then I kind of said, here, I know every tube tester on the market has its limitations and challenges. All of them. None of them are perfect. Because to be perfect, you'd have to create real world scenarios for every tube you're testing. These things are kind of designed by nature to be somewhat generalized and to do a fairly good job of simulating real world scenarios with as many tubes as they can. So none of them are perfect. I was just kind of hoping though for $3,000, this one would have less issues than some of the others. And I kind of, at the end of the day, I found it to have more. So, it just, again, left me with, it wasn't everything I thought it was going to be scenario. And the nails in the coffin. If I just created one slide that said why I sold my Amplitrex, this would be the slide. All the other stuff, kind of secondary, lesser in magnitude. First off, tube testing is slow. It's the slowest tube tester I ever owned. Flat out honest. I I've got somewhere north of 100,000 tubes. I have no idea how many really. Quit counting years and years ago. I bought this thing to be able to sit around and quickly test a lot of tubes, box them, print labels, put them up. Like I said, if something happens to me, my kids have lots of tested tubes to sell. It just didn't play out that way. I envisioned it as a simple operation would bring efficiency, accuracy, and speed to my tube testing. At the end of the day, it wasn't all that. I think the accuracy might be the one piece that it had out of all those. I said kind of here, the bottom line, a good TV7 or a 539B or C is faster at testing single tube sections any day of the week. And like what I'm using currently, this Cartomatic unit, it's Western Electric branded, but it's actually made by Hickok with the new computer control unit that the guy makes and sells. It's at least 2 to 3 times faster at testing multi-section tubes, in my opinion. I haven't scientifically proven that, but it's just my perception at this point in time. So bottom line, this unit was too slow for me. That is ultimately why I sold it. I found myself all the time, even though I owned a $3,000 tube tester, I found myself back over in the other room using my TV7 all the time. And I thought, wow, something's just wrong with this picture. So ultimately, that is why I sold it. The second nail in the coffin that maybe I could have gotten beyond, but probably not at this point, because now it is 2017, a year later, and there's still no software updates. It is a vintage 2004 code base and computer interface. I've swapped some emails with Chris, honestly. I said, hey, I work in the IT industry. I probably got some guys that could rewrite this software for you. And he seemed somewhat interested, but he was basically saying, hey, the tools and the software licensing to write something new is kind of expensive. I'm a single one-man shop here. Unless I can get some kind of good deal on something, there's probably nothing happening anytime soon. So at the end of the day, I kind of walked away saying, well, here it is, 2016, early 2016. I'm selling this thing after 2 years because the software is not getting any better. And I had a conversation with the owner who didn't instill any hope in me that, this was going to get any better. So ultimately, that was the second reason I kind of walked away from this thing. If you're going to have a computerized unit and you're not going to keep the software up to date, kind of shame. It's a big piece of why people probably would buy this thing. So it's just ultimately what drove me to sell this thing. Just a few pictures here, very well made unit, and man was I excited. I was ready to match and test tubes when I got it. Something you don't see here often, two boxes of matched pairs, 7591s. But, I wanted to open up boxes like that, go through them, validate that they were still a matched pair, label them, and because those two boxes might be worth a good amount of money, that type thing. I'll say this is the printer it uses. It's kind of the Brother QL550, and it may have used a couple different variants of the QL series, but it's basically what it worked with. And I'll tell you, as I'm sitting here making this video, that printer is still sitting right in front of me. I kept it, and I still use it with all sorts of printing other things. So keep in mind, you'll spend another $100-150 to get one of these printers and set up. Maybe less these days, but that was what I paid back then, 2014. But I still use it for printing all kind of labels. Brother software, they do keep it up to date, and it talks to this printer well, and they sell all sorts of different labels for these things. I use it from everything from printing labels for records to kind of label, when I bought it, what I paid for it, maybe what variant it is, or what makes this one special, things of that nature. All sorts of things around the shack here. Now here you can see how the power cord and the USB cord kind of keep the lid from being able to close. You couldn't close the lid with those sticking up, etc. Onward, I thought it did a good job of showing gassy tubes. It would point you over here, the little percent gas on the readout. It would, I could tell looking at that one, it kind of lit up, kind of gassy, and it matched with the readings. I thought it did a good job of that. I thought it did really well at testing seeing eye tubes. As you tested it, you could see it open and close, etc. I thought it really did a good job with that. I thought it did a good job of showing emission and GM in standalone mode. However, I didn't get both of those in the computer control mode. And if you'll notice down here, I also found some right hand or left hand, I don't remember which one, USB power cords. You notice how these things came right out and then bent over. The same with the IEC cord, it came right out and bent over. It helped with the lid being able to lay down, but you still couldn't lock it and close it at that point. And finally, I thought I'd conclude it this way. I would buy another one if the price was lowered a little bit, maybe $1,800, $2,000 all in. There's enough demand out there today for somebody to mass produce these things, a modern computer controlled unit, beef up the quantities they're ordering. I noticed Chris orders them in batches of 10 at a time. Instead of doing that, let's get the capital up front. Maybe let's order 100 of them. We'll drive the cost way down on these things by doing that. Get the price in line a little bit more. The $3,000 is just it's a pretty good stretch for most people, I would say. And then if they drive down the cost and they update the dang software, maybe this video will spark a fire. That's what I'm hoping. Simplify the operation, build the printing into the main apps, fix many of the quirking issues, etc. Basically bring that app into this decade. It's 2004. Here we are in 2017, and I don't think this thing's evolved a lot. The code base is the same. They've maybe tweaked a few little things, but it's basically 12-year-old code at this point. And the interface and the way it does the serial port thing, I think there's opportunity for version 2.0 of this unit that would blow everybody's socks off at a lower price point. You'd probably sell thousands of these things. So it's just my opinion. I take it for what it's worth. When people comment on my videos, a lot of times my general reaction in my head is, hey, if you think you can do it better, just go ahead and do it. Make your own video and tell somebody how to do this. Well, if I had the time, honestly, I would crank up and create the next generation tube tester. And you know what? When I retire here in a few years from my day job, maybe I will. If this thing hadn't got any better by then, maybe you'll see something new coming out on the market that I've put together. So, at any rate, everybody, it's my point of view on the Amplitrex AT-1000. It's exactly why I sold it. I'm not making this video versus something else video. It's just why I bought it and why I sold it. Maybe I'll make some other videos later on which tube testers I really like these days and why to buy those. But hope you enjoyed this. Probably controversial. Might even piss off some of you that have bought an Amplitrex. Keep in mind, this is from my perspective, and you may be enjoying yours and getting a lot of success out of it. And if so, I'm happy for you. There were just too many little things about it that kind of got into my crawl, and I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, so it drove me crazy. Especially mainly the part where I found myself using another tube tester all the time, even though I still own this thing. That's what ultimately caused me to sell it. So thanks for watching, everybody. Stay tuned. We've got more videos coming soon.